Chapter 11, The End is Near, Deist Lee's Instruction Translator, Henai Translations Editor, Henai Translations. When the young man approached, Lin Ran felt that he looked familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before, but he couldn't recall when and where. Seeing that not only was Lin Ran not bowing, but he was even staring at the guest, Deist Lee broke out in cold sweat. Please forgive me. This kid is not usually impolite, but... The young man laughed heartily, revealing his two dimples. It's fine, it's fine. It's been many years since we last met. Lin Ran, you haven't changed at all. Even the voice was familiar, but Lin Ran couldn't quite find anything related to this man from his memory. However, from the way he addressed him, Lin Ran thought that he probably knew him. Seeing that the young man didn't take offense, Deist Lee heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, Lin Ran said, I've been staying in Mount Sword all year round and rarely interact with outsiders. Now that I see you, I can't help but be awed by your extraordinary presence. The young man smiled even more brightly. Ha ha ha, you're still as glib-tongued as you used to be. For some reason, although there was no energy fluctuation coming from the young man, Lin Ran could feel that his aura was strong. He must be someone powerful, but he just deliberately concealed his real strengths. This made Lin Ran even more curious about his identity, but it wasn't his place to raise a question. Has there been any abnormality in Mount Sword in the past year? Deist Lee replied respectfully, everything is fine. You can rest assured. The young man immediately revealed a satisfied look. He looked at the mountaintop and said meaningfully, the job of guarding the mountain is very important. Please, don't let your guard down. Lin Ran nodded and followed his gaze. He wondered if this young man knew what was on the mountaintop. The young man seemed to have something to say to Deist Lee. Lin Ran did not linger around and took his leave. Before he left, he vaguely heard the words selected person and not much time. He had no clue as to the content of their conversation. After that, life went on peacefully and unchanged. Lin Ran was not a noisy person and quickly forgot about this matter. Time passed in the blink of an eye. The only thing that remained constant in the flow of time was the mountain range. At this moment, Lin Ran was standing on the peak of the second peak, looking far into the yonder. He was calm and did not emit any sword energy. He looked no different from an ordinary person. However, the calmer, the scarier. Lin Ran had almost reached the level that allowed him to disguise his identity perfectly. Only a senior grandmaster could somewhat discern it. Another year has gone by. Lin Ran couldn't help but sigh. He didn't know how much time had passed in Mount Sword and how long he had been cultivating. He felt like it was first day on the mountain, but he was no longer the champion of the martial arts examination. In this year, he signed in 5 more swords, obtaining the indestructible metal sword intent, 10,000 wood sword intent, formless water sword intent, heavenly fire sword intent, and earth sword intent. With the power of the 5 elements combined with the 5 elements sword technique that Deist Lee had taught him previously, the power was almost tens of thousands of times stronger. Although he was still at the 9th level of the senior martial master realm, Lin Ran had the confidence and strength to fight one in the realm of Grandmaster. Now that he had gathered all the sword intent needed, he felt that it was time for breakthrough. Lin Ran's gaze landed on the top of the main peak. He wondered if he had the strength to explore that place again. Over the past year, Lin Ran's interest in the Forbidden Mountain top had only increased. Just as he was thinking, Deist Lee sent him a curt message. Emergency. Come. Immediately. After receiving the important guest last time, Deist Lee hadn't looked for him, not even once. He did not even send Lin Ran a message. It was as if he had disappeared from the face of the earth. Lin Ran had once tried to get in touch with him, but Deist Lee's room was empty and he was nowhere to be found in Mount Sword. He guessed that either Deist Lee had something to do and left the mountain, or he might be at the top of the mountain. This was because that was the only place where Lin Ran hadn't set his foot. In the dimly lit room, Deist Lee was lying on the bed, weak. After not seeing him for a year, Lin Ran found him to have aged greatly. Hearing the movement in the room, Deist Lee coughed violently. He couldn't see, but his eyes were fixed on Lin Ran. He said weakly, "You're here." At this moment, he was like a candle flickering in the wind, in danger of being extinguished at any moment. Lin Ran quickly said, "I'll call the Imperial physician over now." Deist Lee reached out his withered hand and grabbed Lin Ran's wrist tightly. He shook his head and said, "No need. I know my own body better than the physician. You don't have to waste your time. Besides, I'm old and can't hold on much longer. If not for..." He stopped in mid-sentence. After hesitating for a while, he continued, "In short, I called you over on my deathbed because I hope you can protect the country and the emperor, and it's time to tell you something." Deist Li's expression was unprecedentedly solemn as he said in a deep voice, "You've already mastered the 5 elements sword technique. I'll leave the matter of reinforcing the seal to you in the future." No wonder Deist Li taught him the sword technique a year ago. Now that Lin Ran thought about it, Deist Li probably knew that his time was running out. Chapter 12, The Mysterious Third-Person Translator, Henai Translations Editor, Henai Translations. The reason why I don't let you get close to the mountaintop is that there is a powerful demon sealed there. You must not let it break through the seal. Otherwise, it will bring calamities to the world. There were actually demons sealed at the top of Mount Sword. Lin Ran gasped. No wonder that stone tablet was called the demon-subduing tablet. No wonder Deist Li kept it a secret and warned him over and over. Could it be that the strange roars he heard were from the demon? After saying so much in one breath, Deist Li's face turned even paler. He panted heavily, clearly at death's door. Seeing him like this, Lin Ran's heart sank. The two of them had spent 2 years together on Mount Sword. Although he could count the number of times he met Deist Li on one hand, Deist Li was nonetheless both his teacher and friend. He even taught him the 5 elements sword technique. It was inevitable that mortals be separated by life and death at some point. At this moment, Lin Ran had yet to reach the level where he became indifferent to the mortal emotions. It was only natural for him to feel sad to part with a dear friend. Deist Li struggled to get up and took out 2 stones from under the bed. They contained a huge amount of spiritual energy and looked like top-grade spirit stones. This is the 5 elements spirit stones. Use one for yourself to help you break through, and use the other one to reinforce the seal for this year. Also, I hope you can help me with something after I die. I've guarded Mount Sword for decades and dedicated my life to it. I hope that I can also be buried here, even if that means I have to transform into nothingness and enter the cycle of reincarnation." Deist Li told Lin Ran about his arrangement. At the last few words, his voice was so small that it was blown away by the wind as soon as he spoke. Looking at Deist Li's hand that was slowly losing strength, Lin Ran was silent for a long time before saying, "Don't worry, I'll fulfill your wish." However, this time, Deist Li didn't respond to him. He lay on the bed without breathing. Lin Ran sat there in silence for a long time before getting up to leave. Deist Li had no parents and no relatives. Lin Ran knew very little about his background, but from his words, Lin Ran knew that he had been guarding Mount Sword since he was very young. As he promised, Lin Ran buried Deist Li on Mount Sword. After everything was done, Lin Ran was now the only one left in the huge mountain. Naturally, he felt kind of lonely. It was as if he was the only one in the world. Right, there was also the third person he had never had the chance to meet. Until now, even when Deist Li was on his deathbed or buried, Lin Ran still didn't see the third person showing up. Could it be that the third person never existed at all? However, he couldn't see why Deist Li should lie to him about it. On the other hand, Lin Ran couldn't find any traces of the third person's existence. There were also many mysteries about the demon sealed at the mountaintop that had yet to be unraveled. Lin Ran initially thought that after staying for so long on Mount Sword, he should know enough about it. Perhaps what he knew was just the tip of the iceberg. Let's forget about it for now. If one's strength reached a certain level, all the confusions would, as a result, be cleared. The reason why he was confused was because he wasn't strong enough. Lin Ran looked at the 2 5-element spirit stones in his hand. Even on his deathbed, Deist Li didn't forget to help him. He was extremely grateful. With the 5-element spirit stones, he would be able to break through. Moreover, he could feel that the time had arrived. Lin Ran sat cross-legged as spiritual energy circulated through his body. As if he was pulled into a world of nothingness, his mind was packed with images of Deist Li in his final days. What was life? What was death? In the nothingness, a voice suddenly sounded. Some people would be remembered after death while some would be forgotten. For example, even if Deist Li died, no one would know anything about him except himself. In fact, no one in the Imperial Palace even knew about his existence or what he had done. If Deist Li was still alive, Lin Ran wanted to ask him, is it worth it? Did his life really have no meaning at all? A figure dressed in a tattered daoist robe fluttered in the wind and was drawing closer. It was Daoist Li? Lin Ran couldn't help but mutter to himself, if I were asked this exact question, how would I answer? No, the meaning of a person's existence should not be defined by others. Everyone's pursuit was different and equal no matter whether the cause was small or big. If he had pursued his cause till the end of his life, how would that be meaningless? Instead of becoming a frog, satisfied with its life at the bottom of a well, Lin Ran would rather become a mayfly drifting in the ocean. At least, the world he saw was larger. Daoist Li spent almost his entire life protecting Mount's sword, and that was his pursuit. Even if he wasn't remembered after his death, to him, it didn't matter. Knowing that Lin Ran had found his answer, Daoist Li's figure slowly drifted away with an approving smile on his face. Every living being in the world had their unique pursuit, so what was Lin Ran's? The voice was still lingering and was getting louder and louder, as if it came from the Supreme Great Dao, shaking Lin Ran to the core. Lin Ran pondered for a moment and spoke without hesitation. The Dao I pursue will be covered with thorns and spikes. I thereby ask for a sword that can enable me to clear the path and restore the justice of the world. Chapter 13, Visiting Mount Sword at Night. Who are they? Translator, Henai Translations Editor, Henai Translations. As Lin Ran finished speaking, 10,000 swords buzzed at the same time, and the entire Mount Sword seemed to have come to life. Even the spiritual swords were responding, looking like they were about to take off and fly to Lin Ran. If Daoist Li was still alive, he would definitely be shocked to see this scene. Other than his master, Lin Ran was the second person capable of causing such a phenomenon on Mount Sword. The sword intent at the foot of the mountain was overflowing, as if it was celebrating the advent of something. The roaring at the mountaintop was growing especially strong, which formed a sharp contrast. Lin Ran suddenly opened his eyes that were sparkling with sword light. His entire body was surging with an inexplicable force, like a divine sword that was ready to strike. Lin Ran focused his mind and everything returned to silence. Now, not to mention a Grand Master, even a senior Grand Master might not be able to see through him. I actually broke through successfully. The 5 elements spirit. Stone flickered with a jade-like light. It was simply beyond Lin Ran's expectations. He didn't expect his breakthrough this time to be so easy. Logically speaking, breaking through from Martial Master to Grand Master was very difficult. Some cultivators would be stuck at this stage for decades. However, Lin Ran made it very successful. Not only was it thanks to the formless sword body, but Daoist Li's death also taught him a great lesson and made him learn something he otherwise wouldn't. As a Grand Master, not only would Lin Ran's lifespan increase, but also his appearance would remain unchanged. Most importantly, his 5 senses were made more acute. Previously, he could only sense movements and sounds within 100 miles, but now, he could capture everything that was happening in Mount Sword. Like now he could sense a few sneaky people climbing up Mount Sword on the other side. They were heading towards the top. Is this a good idea? After all, 10-Mile Sword God is the guardian of the Heavenly Saint Dynasty. Will our movements here disturb him? Don't worry. According to the information from Master, the Sword God is suppressing some kind of evil demon on the peak end. Hasn't shown up for decades. That's why we're sent here. To investigate what exactly is going on. I understand what you are saying, but I still have a bad feeling. This is the territory of Sword God. If we're found out, we'll be dead as a doornail. His companion was clearly losing patience. Why are you such a coward? Mount Sword is currently only guarded by Sword God's sword apprentice and a weak guardian. They can't be our match. None of them realized that there was another person behind them. These people were all in the realm of Martial Master. No wonder they were so cocky. If it were Lin Ran in the beginning, even if he joined forces with Daoist Li, they wouldn't be able to deal with them. But now, Lin Ran could deal with them with a finger. Only at this point did he know that Daoist Li was actually Sword God's sword apprentice. Welcome, everyone. I hope your journey here has been a pleasant one. The sudden male voice shocked all of them. Who is it? Show yourself. The men in black were shocked. They turned around and realized that there was a figure standing in the darkness. They did not know how long the figure had been following them, but they did not notice it at all. However, this figure did not emit any energy fluctuations and was just like an ordinary person. Ordinary people couldn't possibly climb a mountain that was tens of thousands of feet tall with their bare hands without alerting them. His strength could not be underestimated. However, according to the information, neither the sword apprentice nor the new mountain guardian could have such cultivation. Who are you? The mountain guardian. The men in black looked at each other and nodded. Without warning, they initiated an attack at the same time. The sound of sharp weapons piercing through the air resounded through the mountain range. Even the cold moon in the sky was frightened by the sword energy and hid in the clouds, only revealing a tip. The men in black were fast, but in Lin Ran's eyes, their speed seemed to have slowed down multiple times. He could even tell what their next moves were. Lin Ran was slightly surprised by the strength he had just gotten. Because it was pitch black, they did not see the weapon Lin Ran was using. In the next second, Lin Ran suddenly disappeared into the thin air. The men were shocked, puzzled for a second as to what just happened. Are you looking for me? For some reason, the men felt a chill run down their spines, and their hands shook so violently that they couldn't even properly hold their swords. Feeling the strong wind above their heads, they subconsciously raised their hands to block it. They felt their hands go numb and the swords in their hands fell off. The sharp sword intent brought them to the brink of death. Under the moonlight, they finally saw the weapon Lin Ran was using. It was actually just a tree branch. On the other hand, their swords had already fallen to the ground and were broken into several pieces. Lin Ran stood there calmly while the men in black retreated step by step, looking as if they were scared out of their wits. To be able to use a branch to defeat them and break their swords, who else could this man be but the 10-mile sword god? Let's go. The men in black knew they were not his match. After throwing down a smoke bomb, they jumped off the cliff in a sorry state. Lin Ran had no intention of chasing after them. These people were simply too weak. If not for the sake of stopping them from climbing higher, he wouldn't even be bothered to show up. He looked at the mountaintop and recalled what those men had just said. Chapter 14, The Secret Path at the Peak, A Pile of Bones. Translator, Henai Translations. Editor, Henai Translations. Although Daoistli had instructed him not to approach the forbidden area at the mountaintop, he was confident that as a Grand Master, he had the strength to wade through that uncharted water. The third person Daoistli mentioned should be the 10-mile sword god. He also wanted to see what the legendary sword god looked like. Lin Ran was a man of action. Last time he attempted, he was exhausted halfway through his exploration. But this time, he felt unprecedentedly relaxed. Soon, he arrived at the top of Mount Sword. It was different from what he imagined the place to be, which was a place covered with layer after layer of array formations. It turned out that there was nothing special about it despite being called a forbidden area. The view at the mountaintop was good. There were no demon or sword god. It was as if everything he heard about what was on the mountaintop was just a rumor. Lin Ran's gaze was instantly attracted by the sword marks on the rock wall. This is in the eyes of commoners or martial artists. These sword marks were just random slashes. Only martial masters or above could understand one thing or two about how skillful these slashes were. He ran his fingers over the rock wall and could tell that these sword marks had been there for a long time. Even so, he could still sense this person's outstanding sword technique and the lingering sword intent. With his eyes closed, Lin Ran could see a figure brandishing his sword across the air, bringing out cold and intimidating sword intents. He danced back and forth around this place with his sword, as if he was alone in this enormous world. Lin Ran's heart skipped a beat. Feeling the sharpness in every strike, he couldn't help but sigh. Incredible swordsmanship. Lin Ran believed that this was the place where the 10-mile sword god was cultivating. He was totally amazed by such masterful swordsmanship and couldn't imagine what his true strength was. It's a pity that I can't see sword god in person. Lin Ran was about to go down the mountain when he saw something from the corner of his eye. Wait a second. He stopped in his tracks and observed the sword marks on the rock wall again. He realized that these marks were all pointing in one direction. It had to be noted that the sword marks were ever-changing and hard to control even by the sword wielder. For all sword marks to point in one direction, this required extreme precision and mastery. It showed that the sword god must be in a terrifying realm. Sword god must have done it intentionally. Lin Ran walked towards the direction the marks pointed at and came to a rock wall covered in vines. Beside it was a cliff. What's different about this rock wall? Lin Ran frowned and pondered. He knocked on it and realized that it was hollow. He picked up the branch on the ground and waved it. The rock wall split open, and a dark cave appeared in front of him. There was actually a secret passage here? A cold aura immediately gushed out, causing goosebumps to appear all over his body. Lin Ran couldn't sense what was inside the hole, but after some thought, he walked in. Since he was already here, there was no reason for him to give up. Perhaps the sword god had not left yet and was still in this cave. The cave was pitch black and extremely narrow, as if there was no end to it. Lin Ran had a feeling that this place was connected to hell. Lin Ran felt an extremely sharp sword intent, and subconsciously reached out to touch the rock wall. Just as he had guessed, it was filled with sword marks. Unlike the marks outside, these sword marks were sharp and filled with killing intent. There was also an indescribable murderous aura, indicating that the sword wielder was in a state of extreme uneasiness. Lin Ran retracted his hand and walked on. He gradually felt his footsteps getting heavy, as if he was shackled by a mountain. He had a feeling that if he continued on, he would probably be affected by the killing intent in the sword marks and lose his mind. What happened to Sword God? He was certain that these marks were left behind by the Sword God. Otherwise, they would not carry such a powerful pressure. It was said that sword intent could represent a person's state of mind. Outside the cave, the sword marks were orderly, showing people the whereabouts of the secret cave. Only those with outstanding talent in the sword deo could discern it. But now, all these sword marks were in a mess and could easily affect one's mood. They could even trigger the dark side of one's heart, causing one to go astray. Something serious must have happened at the mountaintop. Thinking of this, Lin Ran couldn't help but speed up, wanting to get to the bottom of it. The deeper he went, other than the sharp sword energy, there was also an extremely evil aura, causing the surrounding temperature to drop. The cave almost reached the point of freezing. Fortunately, Lin Ran had the formless sword body and was not affected by the evil aura. Even so, he still felt a little uncomfortable. After walking for a long while, the path finally opened up, and light shone in from the countless small holes. With the help of the light, Lin Ran finally saw the scene in front of him clearly. There were sword marks everywhere, even on the ceiling. They intertwined into a huge net that surrounded him, wanting to stifle him. Lin Ran felt suffocated. He forced himself to look away from the violent sword marks. How did this happen? After seeing the scene in front of him, Lin Ran's pupils constricted and he was stunned on the spot. It was as if a huge hammer had smashed down, making him black out. Lin Ran revealed an expression of panic. After entering the martial master realm, this was the first time he panicked. What appeared in front of him was not the sword god, but a pile of bones? Chapter 15, The Death of Sword God and the Escape of the Evil Demon? Translator, Henai Translations Editor, Henai Translations. Lin Ran was suddenly struck by a bold guess. Something that would make him and the Heavenly Saint dynasty extremely terrified was about to happen. He slowly walked over. This corpse should have been dead for decades. Its bones were like jade, and its clothes were rotten. Even so, Lin Ran could still feel the sharp sword intent that had yet to dissipate. The sword intent was soul-shaking and awe-inspiring, causing one to retreat in fear. There was no need to say out loud the identity of the corpse. To be able to possess such sword intent, even if he died, he would continue to linger in this world. If there was anything else that could prove this person's identity, it was the sword beside him. Unfortunately, the sword was already broken. Lin Ran reached out to pick it up. Even though it was broken, the sword energy was still formidable and strong that it could almost materialize. The hilt was inlaid with dragon patterns and rubies, surging with an inexplicable power. It was obvious that it was a peerless divine sword. Buzz! A cold light appeared, followed by a dragon's roar. It was the roar Lin Ran had heard before. He could not help but fall into deep thought. The divine sword had a spirit. Even if Sword God died, it would still carry spiritual energy. It was rumored that Sword God was also born with a sword body. It was probably because of this that Lin Ran's formless sword body resonated with the divine sword. Not at all. Made sense why he heard the roars coming from the mountaintop. I see. But what broke you? This was Sword God's sword. Even if it was broken, it still carried enormous power, let alone before it was broken. Looking at the ghastly skeleton in front of him, Lin Ran sighed. He also noticed that the skeleton had his fist clenched tight, looking like he was about to strike. What exactly was Sword God going to attack? The eyes of the skeleton were fixed on the southeast direction above, looking like he was unwilling to die just yet. Lin Ran looked up and saw a huge gap. In addition, there were several deep claw marks on both sides. He couldn't help but gasp. The evil aura he sensed previously when he came in was densest here. Even after so long, the aura still did not dissipate. This must be the place where the evil thing was sealed. There were all kinds of mysterious totems and symbols carved around the cave. It should be some kind of array formation. However, it was now damaged and no longer had the divine power from before. The thing imprisoned inside had also escaped. Lin Ran had a complicated feeling as he looked at the skeleton. Only then did he notice that there was a line written in a small font on the ground. The handwriting was messy. It must have been written by the sword god in a hurry. I was born with a sword body and entered the path of the sword Dao after decades of cultivation. In order to protect the dynasty, I came here to subdue the evil demon and dedicated my life to reaching the realm of Saint. However, the demon was cunning and sinister. While I was breaking through to the half-saint realm, I was attacked and infected with the evil aura, which will soon decay me from inside out. If anyone is guided to come here by fate, you can inherit everything from me. Although Dragon Roar is broken, it can be reforged. I only have one wish. Please protect the person wearing the phoenix-patterned ruby. The huge amount of information stunned Lin Ran for a long time. The legendary sword god, who is said to be subduing a demon here, is actually dead and turned into a skeleton. Without sword god's presence, the demon has long broken the seal and escaped. Now, the demon is nowhere to be found. The seal that Deist Li had guarded and maintained for his entire life is useless. 10 Miles Sword God had already reached the Senior Grand Master realm. But when he was breaking through to the Half-Saint realm, he was attacked and killed by the demon. Logically speaking, Sword God must be many times stronger than the demon. According to Sword God's description, the demon should have used some underhanded methods to make Sword God fall into its trap. Now, Sword God was no longer around, leaving only a broken sword. It was really a pitiful sight. Sword God, a legend of the era, died just like that, and the most terrifying thing was that the outside world did not know about this. If not for Lin Ran's sudden intrusion, no one would have noticed it even after decades or 100 years. After all, this was a forbidden area that was difficult for ordinary people to enter. Even if they came to the mountaintop, it would be difficult for them to discern the clues from the sword marks. Sword God, rest in peace. After inheriting what is yours, I will fulfill your promise. If Sword God was still alive, he might have reached the half-saint realm. With these sword marks and the other things in the cave, Lin Ran could learn a lot, so, in a way, he regarded Sword God as his Shifu. Perhaps it was Lin Ran's illusion, but he felt the violent sword intent in the air calmed down. Lin Ran buried the skeleton so that Sword God could rest in peace. There were very few things left behind by Sword God. Apart from a broken sword and a few other things, there was nothing else. This broken sword was called 10-Mile Dragon Roar. Unfortunately, it was broken while Sword God was battling with the demon. Now that it could no longer be used, he had to find a way to gather the materials and forge it again. However, the materials needed for this divine sword were definitely precious. It would probably be another problem. Lin Ran carefully wiped it. The originally dusty ruby on the hilt emitted a dazzling light again, as if countless sword beams were shooting out. Dragon Roar jerked slightly before it started trembling violently. On instinct, Lin Ran tightened his grip on the sword. Congratulations to the host for successfully signing in. You have obtained the remnant internal energy of 10-Mile Sword God and the Divine Sword Technique Manual. Chapter 16, The Inheritance of Sword God. The Heaven-Defying Divine Sword Technique Manual. Translator, Henai Translations Editor. Henai Translations. Lin Ran saw an image appear where a figure holding Dragon Roar was defending an entire army on his own. One strike of the sword could cause the earth to split. Just looking at the back of the figure made one feel reverence. It was as if the figure was standing at the top of the world and looking down on all living beings. As soon as Dragon Roar was unsheathed, a golden dragon soared to the sky, bringing out a formidable sword energy. Instantly, the battlefield was enveloped by the humongous dragon. Those senior martial masters and grand masters could not even withstand the power of Dragon Roar and were instantly reduced to ashes. What a terrifying power! At this moment, even if Lin Ran was just a spectator, he could feel the destructive power of Dragon Roar. In comparison, his current strength was too weak. Is this the power of a 9th-level senior grandmaster? Lin Ran subconsciously clenched his fists. Not only did he not retreat, but he even looked straight at the sword beam, not showing signs of backing down. If Sword God could achieve it, he would be able to achieve it too. It was just a matter of time. An unyielding will spread out from Lin Ran, and the sword intent that belonged to him condensed at this moment. An inexplicable power surged in his body, and his aura was like the rising sun, instantly occupying an area. Sword God's sword intent was also gravitated towards him. The two sword intents collided in midair. Boom! The world shook. A huge energy fluctuation devoured everything, turning everything into rubble and sucking them into the void. Even Lin Ran was devoured. He could feel the majestic sword energy rampaging through his body. He was too weak to handle it, and his internal organs exploded. However, because of the formless sword body, the internal organs were quickly repaired. At this moment, Lin Ran was trapped in the cycle of exploding and repairing. No one knew how much pain he was enduring. However, the benefits such suffering brought about were unimaginable. The speed of recovery became faster and faster, and his body became tougher and was filled with sword energy. Unless he suffered destructive damage in the future, nothing could hurt Lin Ran. After God knows how long, Lin Ran slowly opened his eyes. He felt like what happened just now was just an illusion. However, his body was surging with powerful force and he realized that he was actually at the first level of Senior Grandmaster. Just the remaining internal energy from Sword God could send him to this realm. It was hard to imagine what Sword God was truly capable of. Lin Ran rubbed Dragon Roar and could feel the bond between them getting deeper. His tone was like he was talking to a good friend he hadn't seen for many years. I'll fix you sooner or later and give you your former glory. Dragon Roar was attracted to the formless sword body. In addition, after Lin Ran inherited Sword God's internal energy, Dragon Roar became more close to him. It trembled as if it was responding to Lin Ran. Divine swords were spiritual. Even if he couldn't use it now, it would definitely become his good aid in the future. Lin Ran held the sword hilt in his hand and felt that the sword seemed to be forged especially for him. Speaking of which, what is this divine sword technique manual? Perhaps because this place was special and it was where the sword god subdued the demon, the system was very generous this time and gave Lin Ran two things. This is too heaven-defying. This is simply a walking treasure trove of divine weapons. After Lin Ran figured out the divine sword technique manual, he was awestruck. It was equivalent to a skill that could store all the famous swords in the world and be unsheathed at any time. However, this skill had a cooldown effect, and there was a limit to the swords that could be taken out. Otherwise, it would be too OP. This skill could be upgraded. This meant that Lin Ran could reduce the cooldown time and increase the limits of swords in the future. This was a great windfall for Lin Ran. Not only did he obtain Dragon Roar, but he also obtained the Divine Sword Technique Manual and even broke through to the first level of Senior Grandmaster Realm. Lin Ran used the 5 elements spirit stones to purify the evil aura in the air. Without the influence of the evil aura, this place was simply perfect for cultivation. After all, this was once the place where Sword God cultivated in seclusion. It was filled with spiritual energy. Be it cultivating or wiping the spiritual swords, it would be more effective. Most importantly, Lin Ran could observe the sword marks left by Sword God and learn from him. Every and each strike Sword God dealt was enough for Lin Ran to learn for some time. He was the only one in the entire Mount Sword. Now that his divine sense had enveloped the entire mountain, as soon as there were strange movements, he would be the first to know. At the same time, he also found the notes left behind by Sword God, on which he recorded things he encountered while traveling all around the world in his early days. After reading them, Lin Ran felt his horizon broadened. Sword God is really knowledgeable. I'm deeply impressed. There was no sunlight in the cave. Lin Ran sat cross-legged and focused his mind to cultivate. Time passed quickly. After God knows how long, he figured out and mastered all the sword marks on the rock wall. He had also learned most of the sword techniques left behind by Sword God. Those techniques were simply a treasure. Should they be known to the world, they would definitely cause people to risk their lives fighting to get it. Congratulations, host. You have successfully signed in and obtained the graceful sword moves. Lin Ran happened to lack a movement technique with the graceful sword moves. and the help of the 3 essence sword technique and the 5 elements sword technique, he could kill people without leaving a trace. Chapter 17, Battle. The identity of the mysterious young man. Translator, Henai Translations Editor, Henai Translations. Lin Ran was so immersed in cultivating in the cave that he had forgotten about the passage of time. If not for the sudden light of the communication talisman, he would have forgotten that it was time to reinforce the array formation tomorrow. Every once in a while, Daoistli would hold a ritual to reinforce the array formation to calm the people down. This was also what Sword God had instructed. Now that the Sword God was no longer guarding the world, and even the demon had broken through the seal and escaped, Lin Ran still decided to continue the ritual. After all, if this news were to spread, the Heavenly Saint dynasty, which had finally regained its peace, would probably be in turmoil again. The new emperor had just ascended the throne and many people were still eyeing his power covetously. Although the world was peaceful on the surface, peace was hard to come by. Should anyone make use of the fact that Sword God was dead, war would break out across the dynasty. Sword God mentioned in his note that the evil demon has been suppressed for many years. Although it has advanced to the half-saint realm, after breaking through the seal and fighting with Sword God, it must have suffered a huge blow and needs some time to recover. Therefore, for the time being, Lin Ran did not have to worry about the demon harming the human world. As long as others did not come to this cave, no one would know that Sword God had died. What he had to do was to keep this matter a secret, even if he knew that no secrets could be kept forever. Lin Ran prepared what was needed for the ritual. He did not expect that the important guest from last time was also here. He was a little surprised to see Lin Ran presiding over the ritual. Why is it you? Where is Daoistli? Daoistli died in peace. The young man was slightly stunned. With a solemn expression, he whispered something to the people around him. Then, he took the incense from Lin Ran and bowed to the demon-subduing tablet. I pray to the heavens to bless the Heavenly Saint dynasty and ensure its prosperity. He had a pious expression and an upright attitude. His eyes were slightly closed, and his long eyelashes were like butterfly wings that gently covered the top of his eyelids. A man with a feminine look. His eyelashes were actually so long, Lin Ran couldn't help but mutter to himself. Looking at the young man with his eyes closed, Lin Ran felt that the young man had delicate facial features. For a moment, he was so engrossed looking at him that he did not even notice it when the young man opened his eyes. Only when the young man cleared his throat a few times did Lin Ran come back to his senses. The 5 elements spirit stone emitted a warm light. He made a hand seal and followed Daoistli's instructions to form complicated patterns. At the same time, the 5 elements sword technique was activated. With a wave of his hand, the 5 elements spirit stone was embedded into the demon-subduing tablet. A beam of light rose from the tablet and shot into the sky. A righteous aura descended, making the air seem especially fresh. Unfortunately, that demon had already escaped, so the ritual was just a show. After the ritual ended, the young man did not blame Lin Ran for staring rudely at him. He thought that it was his first time hosting a ritual, so he was a little nervous. You did well. Daoistli was right in choosing you. The young man was lost in his memories as he said, last time, he told me that he felt that his time was up and chose you. I thought he was joking, but the young man sighed. I've been busy with worldly affairs recently and didn't receive any news of his death. Where is he buried? Show me the way. He said that he had guarded Mount Sword for his entire life and hoped to be buried here after he died, so I made the decision. Lin Ran was worried that the young man would blame him. Unexpectedly, the young man looked not surprised at all, as if he had expected it. It's fine. It does seem like his style. With the contributions he made throughout his life, he deserved to be buried in Mount Sword. If anyone asks, just say that the emperor, realizing that he had made a slip of the tongue, the young man quickly reorganized his sentence. If anyone asks, just show them this token. The token was also carved with dragon patterns. Lin Ran didn't know what material it was made of, but it looked small and exquisite. In front of the tomb, the young man put down a bouquet of flowers and remained silent for a long time. Lin Ran didn't want to disturb him. He had a vague guess about the young man's identity. It's been a few years. I wonder if you've wasted your time on Mount Sword. Let me take this opportunity to test you. He did not expect the young man to suddenly have the whim to challenge him. If the young man's identity was really as he guessed, Lin Ran was afraid his head would be separated from his body. He quickly rejected, "You exude the aura of a noble person. How can I possibly be your match? I think within a few moves, you can easily take me down. Let's not waste the time." The young man didn't give Lin Ran much time to think. "Draw your sword." The moment he finished speaking, he drew the soft sword on his waist and came at Lin Ran like an agile snake. Lin Ran had no choice but to dodge. His movements were so fast that the young man couldn't even catch up with it. What a swift movement. "It seems that you didn't waste your time here. You definitely weren't telling me the truth just now." The young man grew more interested. He released all his strength and attacked faster and faster. The soft sword hummed softly and trembled. It swam back and forth in his hand as if it was given life. It was obvious that this was also a spiritual sword. The young man could be considered talented at such a young age. Even though he was fast, in Lin Ran's eyes, he was too slow. As the young man attacked, the distance between the two of them became closer and closer. If Lin Ran struck back, he would easily hurt him. He could only retreat step by step. Perhaps it was because the two of them were too close. Lin Ran could smell a faint fragrance coming from the young man. He smelled nice. Lin Ran found it strange that such a nice fragrance came from a man. He took a closer look and realized that the young man's exposed skin was extremely fair, like white jade. Wasn't he a little too much like a delicate porcelain? Chapter 18, She's actually a woman. Translator, Henai Translations Editor, Henai Translations. At this moment, the young man had no clue what was on Lin Ran's mind. On the surface, the young man seemed to have the upper hand, but he knew he didn't. It had to be known that his martial techniques and movement techniques were taught by a senior Grand Master. Even the senior Grand Master in the palace had once praised him for his outstanding talent. He was by no means invincible among his peers, but it was rare for him to find an equal opponent. Now, Lin Ran was able to fight him back and forth with ease. In just a short while, sweat had already broken out on his forehead, but Lin Ran's expression remained unchanged. He realized that Lin Ran was not as ordinary as he claimed to be. "It seems that you have been hiding your strength. What kind of movement technique is this? It's so powerful." Lin Ran was just inches away from him, but the young man had never managed to touch his clothes with the sword. The young man was well-read and had collected all the supreme martial techniques in the palace's treasure vault, but he had never seen such a strange movement technique. "You must be making fun of me. How can I have the chance to learn advanced movement techniques in the deep mountains? I am agile and fast because I used to travel a lot." Lin Ran explained with a sincere look face, but the young man didn't believe a word of it. He raised his eyebrows and said, "It seems that you don't really want to tell me." As soon as he finished speaking, the young man's attacks became even more fierce. Sword intent interweaved into a sword net that trapped Lin Ran, almost leaving him no room for escape. Even so, Lin Ran still remained collected and calm. He dodged leisurely as if he was taking a stroll in his own backyard. It was not offensive but very humiliating. The young man's face turned red, as if he was blushing. His originally delicate face became even more bubbly. As the two of them were physically close, it was inevitable that there would be contact when their bodies collided. Lin Ran felt the softness on his palm and couldn't help but smack his lips. It was too soft, like it was made of water. Being pushed to the corner, Lin Ran finally became a little impatient. It was almost dusk. If they continued to fight like this, it would take at least another day. He gathered strength on his fingertips and released an undetectable sword beam. Lin Ran didn't want to expose him, so he could only do this. The cloth was torn open, revealing a bulging chest, and the breasts hidden underneath the cloth were almost visible. The two of them stopped at the same time, dumbfounded. After coming back to senses, they spoke at the same time. "You actually, how dare you?" The young man, no, it should be the young girl, shouted angrily, stopping Lin Ran from continuing. She adjusted her clothes and looked sulky, and the redness on her cheeks slowly spread out. Lin Ran was shocked and blown away. She was actually a woman. No wonder she had all the delicate features. It was just that her aura was too intimidating and dignified that ordinary people wouldn't dare to look at her face at all. So they ignored her feminine characteristics. In addition, she had been hiding her identity well. If Lin Ran hadn't accidentally cut her clothes, even he couldn't tell. If this news spread, it would definitely cause a sensation in the Heavenly Saint dynasty. Before Lin Ran could digest this huge piece of information, a red light immediately attracted his attention. When he took a closer look, he saw that it was a ruby pendant the shape of a dragon's eye that gave off dazzling rays. When the girl was tidying up her clothes, it was accidentally revealed. This is Lin Ran recalled the last words left by Sword God. Could it be that she was the person he had to protect? Perhaps because Lin Ran's gaze was too intent, it attracted the girl's attention. Seeing that Lin Ran was staring at her chest without blinking, she was immediately furious. She glared at him fiercely, but her cheeks were slightly red. It was unknown if it was because of anger or embarrassment. She did not have her usual intimidating aura. Instead, she looked like a sulking little girl. Her eyes were like summer breeze and peach blossoms in March, making Lin Ran unable to take his eyes off her. After Lin Ran realized that she had misunderstood him, he quickly explained, "I wasn't looking at your chest, and I didn't see anything." As soon as he said that, it sounded like he was really guilty of doing it even if he didn't. The girl's eyes became even more fierce. "It's time to eat." When she heard the voice coming from outside the cave, the girl's expression changed. At this moment, she had already tidied up her clothes and her face had returned to normal. However, the tips of her ears were still slightly red and were hidden in her hair. If one did not pay attention, they would not be able to see it clearly. "You saw nothing." The girl's voice became deep again. She shot Lin Ran a look before turning to leave. Lin Ran stared at her departing figure and was lost in thought for a long time. The emperor of the Heavenly Saint dynasty was actually a woman? No wonder Deist Li asked him to protect the emperor. At that time, he was wondering why the emperor needed his protection since there were plenty of people more powerful than him. So this was what Deist Li meant. Deist Li must know the fact that the emperor was a girl, and so did 10 Miles Sword God. Lin Ran didn't take this mind-blowing discovery to heart. He was as calm as usual. If the empress did not want him to know, he would pretend that nothing had happened. If he felt threatened and wanted to leave, with his current strength, no one would be able to stop him. Lin Ran was very confident. In the entire Heavenly Saint dynasty, unless it was someone above the 5th level of the Senior Grand Master realm, no one could defeat him. Naturally, there was nothing to worry about. Chapter 19, Plotting to Overthrow the New Emperor. Translator, Henai Translations Editor, Henai Translations. From then on, the Empress did not pay a visit to Mount Sword again. Lin Ran put this matter to the back of his mind and dedicated his days to cultivation in the cave. After an unknown period of time, Lin Ran slowly opened his eyes. A glint flashed across his eyes as his expression turned cold. "A few more rats ran into my territory." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure blinked and he instantly disappeared from the spot. Near the forbidden area, a few black figures passed through the mountains like ghosts under the cover of the night. However, they did not know that their every move was being watched by a pair of eyes in the darkness. The night wind blew, causing Lin Ran's sleeves to flutter. He stood on his sword in midair with a silver moon hanging above him. He looked like an immortal descending from the moon, looking coldly at this group of people in black. No one noticed his existence. As everyone knew, the 10 Miles Sword God was in seclusion, and Deist Li and the Mountain Guardian were not strong. Who would have thought that a freak like Lin Ran would appear? Recently, there have been more and more people in black approaching this area. Lin Ran frowned. This was the 3rd time he had seen these people. However, he did not want to alert them, so he didn't make a move. In addition, he wanted to see what these people in black were up to. At the same time, he noticed that the cultivation methods of these men in black were different. From this, it could be seen that they were not from the same faction. Who are they and what do they want? Lin Ran smelled a conspiracy. These men in black were probably afraid of attracting the Sword God's attention and did not stay for long before they left. Lin Ran thought for a moment and followed. 100 kilometers away from Mount Sword at the border between the Heavenly Saint dynasty and the Great Yang dynasty, it was deserted and used as the gathering place by the people in black. Until now, no one had noticed that they were being followed. After all, with Lin Ran's current level, only someone above Senior Grand Master realm couldn't notice his presence. Senior Grand Masters were that common at all. Lin Ran observed for a moment and realized that the people here were all quite strong. The weakest was at the 9th level of the martial artist realm. Groups of some 10 people were constantly patrolling the area. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was so heavily guarded that even a fly couldn't escape. People with this much power to mobilize so many cultivators were definitely not to be underestimated. What's more, these people seemed to be plotting something. In the tent not far away, silhouettes reflected by the lamplight were moving around on the canvas. When the men in black entered the tent, Lin Ran quietly followed. To him, no matter how heavily guarded this place was, he could get in as if he was invisible. In the tent, everyone, please listen to me. With the new emperor ascending to the throne, the imperial court is in turmoil. The current emperor is not a wise ruler. For the future of the heavenly saint dynasty, we should work together. Hearing this, Lin Ran couldn't help but roll his eyes. You make it sound so righteous. In the end, you're just planning to overthrow the current emperor in the name of saving the dynasty and make yourself the new emperor. There were 3 people sitting on the main seat. One of them was a middle-aged man in gorgeous clothes, who exuded a formidable presence. There was a 4-clawed coiling dragon pattern on his chest that only regional vassals were allowed to use. He was the one who spoke just now. 3 groups of men in black came to report. Did you find anything unusual during this investigation? King Zhao, we've investigated the entire Mount Sword, but there's no sign of anyone, other than the forbidden area at the mountaintop. We checked everywhere. It's not easy to get close to the mountaintop because we're afraid of alerting the sword god. King Zhao fell into deep thought and looked at the others. What do you think of this matter, Official Zhang? If the Empress were here, she would definitely be shocked. This was because the person sitting beside King Zhao was the senior statesman, Sun Zhonghong. He usually looked amiable and was respected by everyone in the imperial court. No one would have expected him to be on the same table with Qin Zhao, and he now looked nothing like what he normally looked. Sun Zhonghong's face darkened. After pondering for a moment, he said, the former emperor once gave the word that no one was allowed to disturb the sword god. From then on, we've never seen the sword god again. I'm afraid only the current emperor knows about the situation up there. The third person on the table emitted an intimidating aura that was hard to not notice. He should also be in the realm of Grand Master. Official Sun, what you mean is that you don't know if the sword god is in the forbidden area or not. You could say that, but I can't guarantee it. It turned out that they were the ones who sent out the men in black. From the looks of it, they had been plotting this for a long time. The most important thing now is to find out if the 10-mile sword god is still around. No matter who it was, they were equally afraid of the sword god. After all, he represented the supreme power in the heavenly saint dynasty. He alone could defend thousands of troops and most importantly, he was loyal. With him around, the current emperor need not fear anything. King Zhao, what you said makes sense. If the sword god was still alive, why would His Majesty refuse to invite him out? In my opinion, it's very likely that he's no longer around. But it's said that back then, the sword god subdued the demon and was therefore compelled to stay on the mountaintop to guard the demon. Perhaps we're wrong. If he's still around and we act rashly, we'll be in serious trouble. They discussed endlessly without coming to a conclusion. Chapter 20 Black and White Sword, Exorcism Sword Energy? If this group of people knew that the 10-mile sword god was no longer alive, they would probably immediately mutiny. Now, they did not dare to approach the forbidden area because they thought the sword god was still alive. No secrets could be kept forever. Sooner or later, they would find out the truth. Moreover, looking at these people, it was obvious that they couldn't wait anymore. Unless the sword god really showed up himself, these people wouldn't give up on their plan. I heard that a new master is residing on the mountain. I'm afraid he's recruited by the 10-mile sword god. The people I sent last time were beaten up by him. He might be the disciple of the sword god. I suppose he's just a senior martial master or at most a grand master. We have a senior grand master here. There is nothing to be afraid of. Lin Ran listened attentively. These people seemed to be talking about him. What a bunch of cowards you are. If the sword god is really alive, why has no one seen him all these years? These words completely hit the nail on the head, making everyone present excited. Although the sword god was a powerful presence that they couldn't afford to challenge, their growing desires were stronger than their fear. Sect leader Zhou, you're right. King Zhao was the first to agree. On the other hand, Sun Zhonghong was cunning and did not comment immediately. We've been planning for so long. It's time to start implementing the plan. Sun Zhonghong stroked his beard. He had always been meticulous. After all, if the plan fell flat, It would be a serious crime that would result in his entire family being beheaded. That being said, we still have to consider it carefully. Zhou Hao snorted. He despised Sun Zhanghong's style of doing things. We've been waiting for long enough. If we wait until the emperor has a son, then it'll be 10 times harder to execute the plan. My apology if I'm being rude, but I think you are just scared of death. If that's the case, official son, why did you get involved? I'm thinking about the big picture. What do you, a brainless brute, know? Seeing that the two of them were about to start a quarrel, King Zhao quickly came out to smooth things over. You're both right. I have a plan that can probably work. The sword god is loyal to the royal family. If His Majesty is in danger, do you think he can still sit still? Before King Zhao needed to finish, the other two understood what he meant. However, Sect Master Zhou, I'll have to trouble you with this matter. Please find a position that can only be removed by people in the realm of Senior Grand Master. This way, we can force the sword god to show himself. If the sword god doesn't come out of the mountain, we will immediately dispatch the troops. If the sword god does come out of the mountain, it's fine. Removing the prison will cost him a great amount of cultivation. By that time, it won't be impossible to deal with him. The few of them looked at each other and smiled tacitly. King Zhao, your strategy is wise and flawless. I'm impressed. There was not much information after that. After returning to Mount Sword, Lin Ran couldn't help but sigh. It's not easy to be a new emperor. Not only is there internal and external trouble, but her identity is also special. If her identity was exposed, she'd probably be in danger. This might result in war breaking out across the Heavenly Saint dynasty. However, it had nothing to do with Lin Ran. He was not born and raised here, so his sense of belonging to the Heavenly Saint dynasty was naturally negligible. He was compelled to protect the Empress simply because of the will of the Sword God and Deist Li. Without hard evidence, even if he told the Empress about the conspiracy, she would probably not believe him, and he might end up being accused of sowing discord. After all, one of them was a vassal king with military power, and the other was a high-ranking official of the imperial court, whereas Lin Ran was just a low-ranking official guarding the mountain. It was obvious which side the Empress would stand on. Right now, I can only wait and see. After the previous gathering by the conspirators, the number of people spying on Mount Sword had clearly decreased, but there were still a few keeping an eye on it. Lin Ran was not worried at all. He continued to cultivate and wipe the swords as usual. After all, nothing was more important to him than absolute strength. Over the past few days, he felt a special energy fluctuation coming from the depths of the cave. Lin Ran was immediately attracted to it. What is this? There was actually a sword lying in the corner of the place where the demon was sealed, but he failed to notice it before. The sword was half black and half white. It looked extremely strange, like a Tai Chi yin-yang pattern. In the vast Great Dao, he seemed to see a black and a white fish slowly rising. Lin Ran subconsciously stretched out his hand, and the two fish quickly dissipated into the air. When he looked closely, he saw that the sword was standing there upright. The pattern on it was like the sun and the moon, opposing each other. He sized up the broken seal beside him. There was still an evil aura in the air. Not far away was the place where the 10-mile sword god cultivated and subdued the demon. Suddenly, Lin Ran was enlightened. I see. He could not help but reach out to stroke the sword. As he had expected, he felt an evil aura and righteous aura intertwining.